Hey, it's Rachel. If you find this podcast remotely interesting and helpful, then I ask that you please subscribe and share it with others. This is really just a passion project for me. It's an outlet for me to share what I am learning, which I really enjoy, and I would love it if it's actually helpful to people. So if you could please subscribe and share, it would make my wildest dreams come true. Thank you. All right, on to the episode. Microphone check, microphone check. Hey, what's up? This is the Intricately Woven Podcast, and I am Rachel Cancino Neal, health restoration coach and nutritional therapy practitioner in training. Good news. My hubby is back.
I'm back.
Welcome back, Derek Lee.
It's good to be back.
I'm glad because we have a heavy hitter today. Are you ready for this question?
I am.
Okay. How does your nervous system give you insight into the health of your beliefs and perceptions?
Ooh.
I know. I thought that was a pretty good question myself. So we're going to explore it. Are you ready to do that?
Let's go.
All right, let's do this. I really want to take a moment before I get into all this stuff to say thank you to the listeners that have come back, maybe multiple times at this point. It's honestly incredibly humbling and a big blessing that you are choosing to come back, because I know there's a lot more options out there. So I really do hope that means that this is benefiting you and you feel like pieces of your health are coming together as you learn more. So anyways, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you that you are here. And Derek, that you are here.
I'm happy to be here.
Good answer. Good answer. Okay, so if you have tuned into previous episodes, then you know I like to do review before we just jump into the topic.
I'm fully aware of this.
You are fully... I was actually talking to the listening audience, but...
Well, our day-to-day life, I'm fully aware.
You're fully aware, too.
You throw quizzes all the time.
Yes, so since you are here today, I don't have to do my Jeopardy song like I did last time. This time, you get to answer these questions. So are you ready for this nice... What's a casual quiz?
Just casual.
Just casual.
Just a pop quiz.
You're right. Yeah, no big deal.
No pressure.
Okay, so by this point, you, Derek, you know that the nervous system has two main parts.
Yes.
Central and...
The peripheral.
Yes. Do you know the difference between the two?
The central would be your spine and your brain.
Yeah.
While the peripheral will be basically your senses.
Right.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yes. So it's your sensory area, right? So the way you can look at that is that the peripheral senses the world, both internally and externally, and the central translates it to inform the body what to do with that information. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but not all the information makes it to your brain, because that would
Correct.
be incredibly overwhelming,
Yes.
right? Do you recall there's a gatekeeper of information that when it allows, information does come in, and when it says nope, that means it does not come in. And 99% of that information usually gets filtered out. Yeah.
Yes.
What is that system? What's that gatekeeper called?
Well, dear, that would be what's called the reticular activating system.
Oh, you should see his face right now.
Twinkle in my eye.
He does have a twinkle in his eye. He's feeling
Smile
good.
on my face.
He's got a twinkle and a smile. Yes, so that reticular activating system found in the reticular formation, which is in the brainstem. Good job, yes. So if all this information we ever got always made it to the brain, we would be incredibly overwhelmed. Like, I don't even know if we would be able to live, honestly.
I struggle with just the 1% that comes through.
That's true. That's true. So the information that we receive, both from the external and internal world, is in constant need of translation to know of what level is important. Is this danger or is it fine? So your body and your mind are constantly trying to translate this information. Okay? So the information that comes up through the spinal cord, gets to the brainstem. If brainstem says, well, this is unimportant, uninteresting, this is the usual coherent information, this is not important to me, then it will get filtered out and that parasympathetic state can continue on, right?
Okay.
Parasympathetic can be deemed the rest and digest or the slow down part or the coherent part when things are just kind of in rhythm, nothing unusual, carry on, things are okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if that information is coming up the spinal cord and gets to the brainstem and now it's like alerting because somehow this is important or it's interesting or it's unusual or there's something that is dangerous or incoherent about it. It's broken some kind of a rhythm.
Right.
Then we get aroused. And that can activate that sympathetic state, that fight or flight, that revved up, or that incoherent. Mm-hmm. Something is not right. So then that information will get brought to our attention. So we have this whole brain arousal. So the attention is saying, ooh, what is that? That's only if it's not an immediate danger. If we have a chance to analyze it, then it'll go through that slower process. Otherwise, if it's deemed emergency right now, your body's just going to know what it needs to do. It's going to be like more
go
like a
right
reflex.
into that fight or flight.
Right. And so your neurotransmitters would all get sent out, so you can respond accordingly to that. You'll have muscle tension, heart rate increase, all that stuff. If the information is deemed as, this is dangerous, react right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so things can start to negatively impact this process of deciphering between this is okay, this is not really important, I don't really need to draw attention to this, it's fine. There's things that can start happening like physiological upsets. So meaning like when you're like really tired, you might have a heightened awareness or a little sluggish, where you're like, for me, I start to slur my speech. When I'm really tired, this is 100% true, I have to really try not to drool. It is ridiculous. That's when I know I'm like really tired. But other things that can cause more of that sympathetic state or where there's like negative impact in how much is the brain, like the regulation of the brain. Blood sugar is out of whack. That can affect that. Dehydration, if you have infections going on, any kind of infections can start to impact the reticular activating system, and that started impacting what gets translated into your brain. But we've also been talking about, in previous episodes, grief and trauma cause this emotional brain injury that makes the brain won't work as well. Not permanently, but just as you're going through it, it can have like segmentations throughout your brain where emotional brain and thinking brain have a hard time communicating.
Right.
The emotional brain starts like becoming on fire in your thinking capacities to think things through, to judge things, to reason. All that kind of goes down. But you can open up communication again. So it's not a permanent thing. It doesn't have to be a permanent thing. You can open up communication by becoming self-aware. Self-awareness is incredibly important. Derek, I'm throwing this one at you.
I know.
What do you remember about being self-aware?
Oh, I think if I recall from our previous conversations that it has to do with bringing thoughts and feelings, emotions, reactions, trying to bring them up to the front of your mind to actually think about them.
Right.
And ask yourself, why am I doing this?
Right.
Why am I feeling this? And explore that.
Yeah.
With not judgment, but curiosity.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll bring it up to the forefront. And this can be an emotion, a sensation, a bodily thing that's going on. So any of that, you can bring that up to your awareness and say, ooh, what is this about? And become curious about that. And when you become curious rather than like just judging it, then that gives more of an integrated mind aspect to it, meaning that your emotional and your thinking brain can interact and form this communication patterns, this neural pathways to kind of walk through it. Not easy. And I want to say, as right now, my emotional brain tends to be on fire. So trying to get to that thinking process, that curiosity is very, very hard, but it's a very important step to get to in order to open up those lines of communication.
Right.
And part of that too is being vulnerable, being vulnerable to yourself, saying this is how I'm feeling, and then that's just what it is. This is what I feel right now. Doesn't mean I have to stay here. And then we're gonna get into this as we talk about beliefs, but to recognize and be truthful with yourself. If you are a believer, then you get truthful with God. I love there's a verse, Psalms 51. I think it's 51 where David is asking about a clean heart, and I've heard that created me a clean heart quite a bit. But it might be 51:4, 4 or 5, somewhere in there, that David says, "Behold, you delight in truth in the inner being. You teach me wisdom in the secret heart." I just love that because you have to be truthful. Mm-hmm. You have to be truthful in the inner being where maybe nobody else sees. You got to be truthful in those areas. And then as a believer, we have access to wisdom in that secret heart. So I just love that. Okay, so along with exploring areas of trauma and grief and becoming curious about those things, maybe you're going through stresses right now in your life, you become curious about that. We're going to also explore and become curious how your beliefs and your perceptions are also impacting your body, and it can be impacting your steps toward a healthier body. So we're going to talk more about that in our coffee shop talk. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so we are talking about beliefs and perceptions. Derek, are you an expert in this area?
No.
No. I thought I think I have a decent idea, but I did not know when I was wanting to explore this topic. I actually had more ideas, like talking more about mindsets and perspective, and then it got like super complicated. So, all that's to say, Derek, you are not an expert. I am not an expert, but I'm going to share my 2 cents, and Derek, I hope you share your 1 cent.
You stole my line.
I knew you were going to say it. So we are just wanting to talk about this because beliefs are really important, I feel, in the function of your nervous system. So we're going to get into that. Okay, so as we have this conversation, please, since Derek nor I are experts in this, and we are not philosophy majors, and apparently this is a very philosophical discussion, please don't get caught up in the terms, but just focus on the ideas, okay? Derek, do you agree?
I 100% agree.
Okay, because, yeah, I think that'd just be easier. There will be definitions throughout, so you know what we're alluding to and hinting at, or, whatever, but...
So could we just go ahead and jump right into that and get the definitions down?
We're gonna get some of them. We're gonna
okay.
see. Hopefully, yeah. Okay, so to prepare for this conversation, I did read through different articles, and I spoke with my stepdad, who's a counselor, and he really focuses on beliefs and emotional responses, and he was helping me grapple with all these differences. In some ways he helped, but in other ways it didn't, because his thought process through it is really different. So we're just going to consolidate everything that I read and have experienced, and we're gonna go with that. So we're going to start. We're not going to linger here for too long, but we're going to start with how he explained mindsets. So according to my stepdad, Martin, he sees mindsets. He saw it as a container. I asked him, can I see it as a house instead? And he said, that's fine. So I'm seeing it as a house.
All right.
So inside of a house, you have people.
Okay.
Right? Are those people the same?
Oh, no.
Are their beliefs the same?
No.
Are their emotions and wills the same?
Oh, no.
Attitudes?
Never.
So, Derek, why are you speaking so emphatically here?
Oh, I'm just picturing our house at this moment.
We got 2 boys, an almost 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and we got 5 animals who also have their own sets of wills.
Very unique attitudes.
So when we see all this is encompassed in a house, though, right? The house doesn't change, but the things inside of the house can change. Like, even the people will change their beliefs and their emotional ones. And
they're going to grow.
Right, right. So that's kind of the idea of how Martin explained mindsets to me. And again, there's a bunch of different ways of seeing this, but that kind of like made sense to me. So you can tell, though, if a mindset is working for you.
Okay.
Sometimes our mindsets work for us, and sometimes they work against us. Okay, so since I'm not 100% sure about all the intricacies and terminologies and all the philosophies that goes into this, I'm just going to share my understanding from here. Okay, so we have mindsets may be viewed as a house, and inside that house you have your beliefs, your wills, your emotions, attitudes. We got that, right?
Right.
So we're going to really more hone into a few of those topics. Do you have any idea how you can tell, Derek, if a mindset might be working for you?
If you're reacting negatively,
right,
to maybe a small situation, that taking something small to be very big,
right,
to me that would maybe be a reason to pause,
right,
and reflect. And
so let's give an example. Let's just pretend that you have a certain way you want something done. What is something like that?
How quickly morning routine should be done.
Okay, the tasks of the morning, right?
Yes.
And in your mind, you have a certain order.
An order, a timeline.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And so when the boys are going slower than that.
Oh, Lord.
So sometimes I'll walk in the middle. Usually I leave your morning. I just lock myself away. But sometimes I'll come in and I'll say, does it have to be this way? And you usually look at me and say, no. And so then I ask you, well, what's the big deal? I don't know. I just want it done. To me, that would be an example of a mindset that you got going on, because your emotional intensity is quite intense when you get in your task mode, right? Now, we have a plethora of examples for me. I get quite intense. But some reactions that you can look at, right? So if you are highly reactive emotionally, if you tend toward certain extremes, like you go toward anxiety or you go toward depression, that might be a red flag that your mindset, again, that house, the stuff that's going on inside of it is not the greatest. Or maybe your thoughts are foggy or unfocused, or you're like hyper focused and hyper vigilant. All of these are telling you something, right? And what's really happening is that your nervous system is actually communicating to you, right? You get agitated. Well, it's not just like, oh, I'm just agitated. Your nervous system is communicating at that point, and it's communicating whether you're in a parasympathetic state or a sympathetic state. And so then you can recognize these behaviors by the way that your nervous system is communicating your status. You can see, is this mindset working for me? Well, if I'm constantly depressed, is there a belief I have going on? Or if I'm constantly anxious, or if I'm constantly intense about this timeline, what is happening right now, right? And so when there's those moments, it's just a good moment to pause and say, I need to get curious. Why am I so intense about this right now?
Right.
Especially if there is wiggle room, like when we're talking about time frame. Sometimes, yes, you have to do this. Sometimes, no. And so just evaluating, like, why? And so inside of this house, or that mindset, I said we have like different things, right? I've already mentioned it a couple times with the wills, emotions, attitudes, and beliefs. We're going to take a closer look at how beliefs are formed and how those impact your perception.
How beliefs are formed.
Yes. Okay. So when we're looking at beliefs, again, I didn't know perceptions and beliefs were different, but they are. When we're looking at beliefs, these are the things that you have deemed to be true and of value. They hold some high regard to you. And you don't have like a few of these. According to Martin, he thinks like we have like thousands. I don't know if everybody would agree with that, but when I stopped to analyze how I can get reactive, or, most of those reactions, I'm like, I think I have some underlying beliefs that are going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have many of these things that we hold to be true and are of value to us for whatever reasons. Okay? So sometimes there's actually like a process that we go through that enables a belief to be had. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Sometimes it seems like it just happens. Like, I don't know where this belief came from. I didn't really think about it. It's just there. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that one first.
Okay.
Now, I do in-person teachings, and I go into my first session. Each session's 2 hours long. In the first session, I start introducing this concept. I actually go into it quite a bit about how beliefs are really important when you're talking about health. Mm-hmm. Because we filter so much through that, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, before I really dive into other aspects about the body in these sessions, I talk about those beliefs. And I bring some things up. So to prove the point, I collected some slogans or sayings that are well known to see how long it could take somebody to fill in the blanks. So Derek.
Another pop quiz.
It's not a pop quiz, I guess. But I just want to see how fast you can fill in the blanks to these slogans or figures of speech.
Okay.
Okay?
I have not seen these or read these.
Yes.
So.
You're longing into my eyes and trying to get the answers. I can see. Okay, here we go. First one. Nike, just
do it.
Do it. Homeschoolers are socially
awkward.
Pull yourself up by your
bootstraps.
Now this is more of like a greeting. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Derek, how long did you spend committing all those things to your memory?
None.
0. Right?
Right.
At some point, though, you've learned it.
Over and over and over.
Have you ever noticed any of these sayings kind of making their way into your belief system or your different beliefs? Let me pose one to you. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Well, that's the one I was thinking.
Yeah?
That I definitely have that as a belief, a very strong belief, that if I make a mistake or I don't know how to do something, who cares? I got to figure it out on my own.
What's the likelihood of you asking for help?
0.
Yeah. it's not very high, right?
Yep. That is definitely a very strong.
Yep.
What is Martin's that scale? It's a 100 for me.
Yeah, Martin mentions that an intensity scale when you look at your beliefs and to see how much do you hold a belief to be true. Mm-hmm. And so if you're self-aware, then you might know that's 100%. Right. If you're not self-aware, you might be like, well, I mean, like sometimes. But then if you examine your emotional reactions to it, and you can see, well, I never asked for help, but you're self-aware enough to know you are very much pull yourself up by the bootstraps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas for me, I'm very much in that, how are you doing? I'm fine. Now, as I'm becoming more self-aware and realizing people need to tell the truth, I am more likely to say...
the importance of being vulnerable.
The importance of being vulnerable.
As you talked about earlier.
My answer right now to people, how are you doing? I'm doing. And then people are like, oh.
What does that mean?
Yeah, and yeah, so... when I think about the lack of time that you dedicated to learning these answers... But they're like on the tip of your tongue within seconds. Probably before I finished the statement, you already knew what the answer was, right? So I also think some of these have a way of becoming our belief. That these things are so fast that, like you said, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? The one that I think is really funny, homeschoolers are socially awkward, right? That's a classic. That's a classic. I was homeschooled until 6th grade, and guess what? People are always amazed by it, which is so funny to me, because I'm like, what did you expect? What did you expect? And people are like, you're like really good at talking to people. I wasn't like isolated from the world.
Right.
I had different opportunities. And also, we are a homeschooling family. So with that statement, how many of you have already created this picture in your mind and said, I hope they're socializing their kids, when I told you that we're a homeschooling family?
Probably most of you.
There's at least one of you that maybe have thought that. I'm not blaming you, because it is a part. Again, if you are able to answer or to fill in the blank, so homeschoolers are socially and you already knew awkward, ooh, that's a red flag. That's a time to get curious. Where did that information even come from? So like I got curious about that because as I was debating whether or not we would be homeschooling, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't causing damage, right? So can I tell you a tidbit of information here?
Of course.
Of course. I did the research, right? And there actually hasn't been a lot of research on it, but the research that has been done has found that there is no data that indicates a child who is homeschooled will be socially awkward. Actually, the opposite usually happens. They're usually better mannered. They're more accepting of other different kinds of people. They're more curious and overall well-rounded. So can you have a socially awkward child who is homeschooled? Yup. You can have a socially awkward child who's in public school as well. So I'm just saying, challenging beliefs is a very important thing, right? So again, this just shows to me that society plays a role into our beliefs.
Absolutely.
And we're not always aware of that, right? But really, our beliefs start way before we are consciously aware of it. So like these statements, you were not consciously aware that you were learning something and probably implanting that as part of your belief system, right?
No.
But even before all that, before your thinking brain is even like developed, while you're in your mother's womb, you are already getting information that is communicating that you are either wanted or unwanted. It has to do with the hormones that are being delivered from mom to baby, right? There's this whole communication that's going on. So from there, baby grows, birth happens, and now parents are holding this child. Right? And so as you're going through your developmental years, the actions that your parents show you will communicate and become part of beliefs about who you are as a person. Okay? In those developmental years, 0 from birth to 5 years old, 90% of your neural pathways have been established.
Wow.
Now, those can change and shift and all, there's growth that can happen. But from the time of birth to 5 years old, children are getting communications about who they are. So parents communicate this through their actions, right? They can communicate that you're wanted or that you're important, that you're safe. They do this by making sure your needs are met. When a baby cries, you respond, right?
Yeah.
As a parent, you respond. That communicates, when you need me, I'm here. Okay? When you make direct eye contact, that direct eye contact is telling the baby, I see you. I know you. It affirms their personhood. When you smile and talk to the baby, when you listen, when the baby grows, able to talk, you listen to the words, you don't interrupt, you allow them to share their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions, and a broad range of emotions from I'm super happy to I'm super angry, and allow them to explore those things.
Yeah.
So when parents do this, they're helping the child to feel felt safety, which is that feeling a sensation. They're helping them experience connection, and they're affirming their personhood. They're saying, I see you, and I know you, and I love you, and I want you, and I like you. Which all communicates to a belief system. So that, and I should say belief system because that makes it sound singular. All your beliefs start trickling through those, in womb, from conception all the way through. Right? And so when you haven't experienced these things, let's say you didn't have a good attachment, a secure attachment, or you didn't feel safe in your home, there's an altered brain chemistry that actually starts to happen. And the nervous system will usually shift from balance to a more sympathetic dominant state. Their fight or flight will be more dominant than their rest and digest. It's supposed to be nice and balanced, but if you didn't feel safe
as a child
as you're growing,
your needs are not being met.
Not even like when we're saying conception through, like developing and on to adult years, all that felt safety, that connection, that I see who you are.
If that is
but
not
early on,
but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like early on, if the baby is not getting those things, then what's happening is they are getting changed to be more prone to stay in that fight or flight.
Yes. It alters the nervous system and which part is more dominant. Again, you're supposed to have this beautiful balance between the two because you need both responses. But if the child has that experience, that safety, that security, that connection, that I am loved and I am wanted, then that chemistry starts to shift over so that they become more in that anxiety stage where their cortisol levels are heightened. So it really starts messing with their chemistry.
Wow.
And that also includes, like, if, baby was born through an emergency C-section, that can put them in a fight or flight survival mode. Stays in the NICU can do that as well. So that's just something to consider that, like, for one of our kids, he was an emergency C-section baby. He was, like, in the process of dying when he was brought forth. So because of that, like, right before birth survival, like, his body was flooded with neurotransmitters and his hormones to survive, his body tends to be more hyperactive. If you have been through that, like you yourself or your child's been through that, just kind of know that if they're freaking out, think back to their birth story, think back to their in utero health. What was life like while they were developing inside the womb?
Yeah.
That might give you some indications of some different things. And so the way these things play out when we're looking at those, like, early childhood developments is your hunches and intuitions as an adult. So there is a book called How We Love Our Kids. I don't know if you remember the story about a boy that was in the NICU, and so he was itty bitty, like newborn, and they would prick his feet to do, like, the blood samples, and he was, like, I can't remember, like 3-4 years old or maybe 3, and playing with his animals, and he kept pricking the foot, and they had never told him that part of his story, but he knew it. He remembered it. His body remembered what it was like. So those intuitions, like when you have that feelings, that's just like, oh, this is like a belief that's coming out to play, right? Beliefs can also go through a much more intentional process, and when we get to the nerd out segment, we're going to go really into it. We're not there yet. But did you know the beliefs start just as thoughts?
Well, you've mentioned that in the past.
Yeah. So, like, not all, again, there are some beliefs that kind of we're just surrounded by and we aren't aware that it's becoming part of who we are. But there's other beliefs that we have a chance that it's entered into our minds as a thought, and then that thought can become a belief. It can become part of who we are.
Okay. Do you have an example of this?
For myself?
Or one that you've noticed of mine?
I'll take myself if you want to learn more about me. Yeah, I would say I had the hunch. I'm assuming this came from my lineage because I had a lot of people who were more into the natural therapies and stuff. When I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, there was that hunch inside of me that there was probably lifestyle changes or things that I could do that were more quote-unquote natural. And I say quote-unquote because sometimes you have to do supplements that, like make chemically done for you and all this. So, but I had a hunch that I could do a different approach. It did have to be on medication if I didn't want to be. And so then I started exploring it. And as I thought about it more and more and started reading and looking at things and researching and doing all this, it became a belief that, nope, I have a belief that my body is showing me symptoms and these symptoms are telling me something. And I might be able to discover why it is I'm showing these symptoms. So it pushed me to this point of, I believe that I can have restoration in my body, that I don't have to be on medication the rest of my life. So I sought it out. And here we are.
Yeah.
So, that probably first example I could think of.
Yeah, I mean, it's very tangible.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting when we look at beliefs and perceptions. Beliefs, again, are things that you have deemed to be true and valuable. You have placed value. It matters to you. Okay. Perception, though, is how you interpret things, which is influenced by your beliefs and your experiences.
Okay, perception is how I interpret.
Right. Through the lens of beliefs and experiences. And this is why I think talking about beliefs when it comes to your health is so important, and to understand that you filter in a lot of information through those beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And that it influences how you interpret things. So again,
Right.
going back to this example, I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis. I had a belief, though, that I did not have to take medication for the rest of my life if I chose not to, and if I wanted to put the work in.
Right.
So then I said, that's what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I just kind of kept building off this hunch, this belief that this doesn't have to be. So my perception of how I interpreted the information the doctor was telling me was, well, that's your opinion. I'm going to see if there's another one that I agree with.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Carla Hannaford in Smart Moves, we've quoted this one before, but she says that perceptions can become our reality. Again, this is why looking at your beliefs is so important. If beliefs informs your perceptions, and perceptions can become your reality, it's going to influence your nervous system.
Yeah.
Right? And another way of putting that, if we look at our beliefs, then we can get a really good look of why we're seeing something as reality. In the scope of what I practice and have experienced when it comes to my own health, talking about the psoriatic arthritis and the doctor telling me, you're going to be on this medication the rest of your life. Again, I had a belief that these symptoms are actually telling me something, rather than my body's just making a mistake and screwing up.
Right.
Which is a commonly held belief. So it's been my belief in that has become my reality in the sense of I didn't linger there. Now, do I still have symptoms sometimes? Yes. So once, like if I've been stressed, not eating well, really tired, I know my knees are going to swell up. Right? But does it feel like, where did this come from? I don't even know. I can backtrack because I've learned to listen to my body.
Yeah.
I've learned that...
To be self-aware.
To be self-aware, yes.
That's simply all it is.
Yes, I've become self-aware. So now, I mean, currently, so in my physical health, I've been able to do that. Now I have a new learning season that I get to undo some neural pathways and rewire, and it's great. You know, personal growth is great, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult. But you can, right? You can rewire and create these new neural pathways if the information is valued and practiced. So again, going back to the belief, things that you hold to be true and things that you see as valuable. If things are practiced and valued, it becomes a template for reorganization of previous patterning. This is in the book Smart Moves. So when you take a look at those beliefs and you're seeing, I'm highly reactive to all these things, it's not giving me hope, actually, when this thing comes against, I'm taking the example of, I'll go back to my example of, for me, when the doctor said, you're going to be on medication the rest of your life, my belief gave me hope and vision and a future.
Yeah.
It
Give you
did not,
direction.
the belief did not cause me to become depressed or anxious. It did the opposite. And so when we see how we react toward our belief, what are our emotional responses toward that belief, gives you like an indication. And so according to Smart Moves, that when we see information as valued and then we start practicing it, it can help us reorganize whatever previous patterning that was done before. We can reorganize that according to what we now value and are practicing. The really cool part when we're talking about these beliefs that go through a thought process is that you actually have an opportunity to pause and ask yourself this question. Do I want this thought to become a part of who I am? And that would be in the form of a belief. Mm-hmm. And that's presented by Dr. Caroline Leaf. Now it's time you've been waiting for.
Waiting.
Yes, so we're going to look at how a thought becomes a belief. And in this nerd out, you're going to hear some brain structure names. So get ready.
Let's nerd out.
All right, let's nerd out. Derek, you want to take this nerd out moment?
No way.
You want to handle these brain structures?
This nerd out moment is my time to just relax.
Pop quiz.
No.
Do you remember how to make a brain with your hand? How to make a
all right,
visualization?
So you hold your hand up.
Yeah.
You tuck your thumb in.
Make the number 4. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
That's the number 4.
And wrap it around. I was looking at my thumb, like, I don't see the number 4. And wrap those fingers around, and that gives you an idea of the brain.
Right. Do you remember which part is like the visual representation for emotional brain?
Emotional brain. A visual representation. Flip the lid.
Yeah, that means that your thinking brain is offline.
Yeah.
The thumb area represents emotional brain.
Oh,
and then the finger area represents, yeah. And the wrist is your example for the brain stem, right? Well, we're going to get more technical than that. But I just wanted to see. So, I have read various books about how the brain works, nervous system, because I find it fascinating. This information has been gathered solely from Who Switched Off My Brain by Dr. Caroline Leaf. It is a great book where she does give some really good science. She's a neuroscientist, so it's really interesting. So here we go. We're looking at how thoughts can become beliefs. Thoughts, what are they? They're just chemical impulses that can become permanent and form their own neural pathways. Through thoughts, our attitudes are activated, and this gives a reflection of our state of mind. Right? So if you're in a bad attitude, you kind of get an idea of what your state of mind is. Here's the process, though, of how those thoughts can become part of who we are. Information is received. We talk about the peripheral. Peripheral sends it up the spinal cord, up to the brainstem. If the brainstem says this is information that needs to keep going up to the other brain structures, then it determines fight or flight, rest or digest. What is this information? So in the brainstem, it kind of starts determining those things, and then it sends it up for brain arousal. It is at this point when the brain becomes aroused that you get to decide, do I want to keep thinking about this thought, or am I ready to dismiss this thought?
Okay.
Now, if you choose, I want to keep this thought, then the thalamus, another brain structure, will collect this information, and then it will alert these existing neural pathways to understand the information. Mm-hmm. Our attitudes then toward the information get activated, and this starts influencing our choice of how are we going to respond here. From here, the hypothalamus, another brain structure, will respond by coordinating hormonal responses through the pituitary gland. And this will launch the responses in the peripheral area. So those hormone-producing organs will now know what kind of response it needs to have based on what's going on in the brain. Okay. This is why body and mind are so interconnected. They constantly are in communication.
Right.
Now, in order to determine what kind of responses is going to need, the amygdala will let the hypothalamus know if this is a positive or negative emotional response. Okay, whether or not there's been something attached, what emotional meaning has been attached to this information.
Right.
So then from there, if it has been deemed fight or flight, then the hypothalamus tells the hormone-producing organs, this is the hormone response I need. Mm-hmm. If it's rest and digest, it tells this is the hormone response that I need. Once all this happens, a thought can now become a part of who we are. It can become a belief now. The hippocampus, another brain structure, will remember this. And then the response next time will be quicker because now it's logged into your memory. And the more often this communication happens, that pathway is used, the stronger that neural pathway will become. This is why in Smart Moves it says this. Emotions, motives, and thoughts aren't inextricably linked.
They would have to be.
They would have to be. Because they're all giving each other information.
Yeah.
Right? So what you can remember from that nerd out is that you have a moment when a thought comes in, and now you're consciously aware of that thought. You have a moment. It's not very much. You don't have much time to say, do I want this thought to become a part of me? Do I want this to become a part of my beliefs? If you say no, then it gets dismissed. And your your hippocampus isn't going to log it away. It's less likely to do that. But as soon as you start mulling it, letting it stay there, as soon as you stop taking captive your thoughts, then it has a chance to become part of your beliefs. And then the more often you're exposed to it, the more that neural pathway, the trickier it becomes to, or the more, not trickier, but the more intentional you have to become in order to get rid of it.
How much harder you're going to have to work.
Right. Through neuroplasticity. You can do it. It's just going to take a lot of intention. I'm preaching to myself right now. Dang. All right, so let's see how we can see the whole body connection in this.
All right.
Okay, so what does this mean for the whole body? Right? Because I just said, mind, body's always interconnected. So this is how we can interpret this. This is how I interpret it. A shift in your perspective, like how you're seeing something, comes through self-awareness. Through that self-awareness, you can allow new beliefs to form. When you take a pause, bring that thought into your consciousness, you look at it and say, do I want you to be a part of me or not? Okay? If you say no or yes, and I want to form new beliefs that can benefit me, you can now begin to form new memories, and you can learn because your nervous system has gone from revved up or incoherent to a slowed down or coherent mode. So if you have a belief right now that's not working for you and say, I do not want that thought, I want a new belief that says I can do this. You're training your nervous system to shift, to create new neural pathways. And every single time you make that choice, that neural pathway gets stronger and the other one gets weaker. So you can do it.
Right.
Again, it's about that belief. Do you have the belief?
Choose?
Yes, what are you going to choose? You had the belief, I'm stuck, I can't do anything. And I'm saying that one because this is a belief that I struggle with right now in our life circumstance. I can't do anything, I'm just stuck here. What if, instead of going down that neural pathway over and over, and I hear that thought, I see it, and it's telling me, I can't do anything about this. I say, no, that's not going to become a part of me. I say, I can do this. I'm going to learn. Challenges and new experiences is a prime opportunity for me to learn something new.
Yeah.
So what if I started doing that?
Well, you're actually going to start to see change.
Right.
You'll see growth.
Right.
I mean, since we homeschool, I get to see firsthand, you get to see firsthand, the boys struggle in learning a new concept. Well, one of them may get stressed out or overwhelmed, so they're getting like, I can't do this. Well, as the adult, you or I will try to, hey, why don't you go do this to get yourself to calm down, to change your perspective,
to change the thought,
change the scenery, and then come back and remind them, you've done this 2 days ago. Let's think about those things. And then get their perspective to let go of that perception and belief that I can't, but
Well, to let it go, I mean, it's also kind of distracting. Like I'm not going to mull over it. It's been forgotten, so I can go over here.
Yeah.
So when you do that, instead of the stress neurotransmitters being sent out, that adrenaline, things that make your heart rate pump, therefore your cortisol levels are going to go up because you're getting revved up, you're getting anxious. Or on the opposite spectrum, you've been too revved up for so long that now you're becoming numb. When you start numb or depressed or foggy thinking, you can start shifting that stuff, right? If you can say, I don't want this thought, I'm going over here instead. And sometimes it does take an act of distraction before you can do it.
Right.
Sometimes that's what I have to do, to distract and then come back to it and say, this is the thought that I do want, and create those neural pathways, a part of your memory. The memories are in your hippocampus.
Yeah.
Right?
All right, so we just finished up like the whole body connection, and I know you always like to finish with like kind of that what can we do to improve, get better, to better ourselves. So in this one, you had mentioned, to distract from a thought. What are some other things that can be done?
Okay. Yeah, especially if you want to shift that belief, right, from being hurtful to helpful.
Right.
I asked Martin that question again because he really is about looking at beliefs and those neural pathways and how do we create new neural pathways. So this is what he recommends, and I really like it. So we're going to talk about that. He says to categorize your beliefs. I love I'm a categorical thinker. It's funny. I'm a categorical thinker, yet I love making connections. I just now realized that. But categorize your beliefs. So he puts it like this. You can look at your priorities, look at your intentions, your expectations, your purposes, your goals, consequences that motivate your decisions, and how you judge and analyze those decisions based on the consequence. Okay? And then ask yourself, can you make plans for change in any of these categories? I'm going to insert right there, when you're making plans, there was like an acronym for it, but basically every time you're making a plan or a goal, you want to make sure you have like a time frame and it's measurable. So like in our house, we made a goal to, we were having a lot of rage fits from our children. So Derek and I said, for 15 days, we want to successfully de-escalate. And we did it.
We did do it.
Success! But yeah, so you just want to make sure when you're making goals, when you are looking at those things, make sure it's measurable. But yeah, I think these are great. If you do try any of those, as always, please let me know. Comment and let me know.
All right, to wrap up, let's go back to the original question. How does your nervous system give you insight into the health of your beliefs and perceptions?
Okay, so one more time. If you see that your nervous system is getting revved up when one of your beliefs or how you're viewing something, right, how you're interpreting things, and you're chronically getting revved up or you're chronically going to that depressed side, that's a great moment to pause because your nervous system is telling you, this isn't good for me. And so you have a choice to make in that moment, right? You have a choice. Do I hold on to this belief or do I start challenging it? And sometimes life challenges and new experiences, things like grief and trauma can actually, it forces you into this moment of analyzing your beliefs sometimes, right? But yeah, if you're noticing that your nervous system keeps going on this pendulum of, I'm either super revved up or I'm feeling super depressed. I'm super hyper focused or I'm super all over the place. Those are just indications that something is going on, and it's a way that your nervous system can be talking, and that's where you can become self-aware and get curious. Why am I reacting? Why am I doing these things? So take a look. Don't dismiss it. Get curious. Take a pause and see what happens. Okay, any other thoughts?
No.
All right, so in the next episode, we're going to be looking at the structure of the nervous system and how you can actually nourish it. So looking at some foods that might be really good for your body. And after that, we have just one more episode dedicated to the nervous system, and then we'll be moving on to digestion. We're almost there. A couple more episodes. Okay, and as I always say, if you have any specific questions, please comment. I'm a teacher. I teach better when you ask questions, so I know what you need. So yeah, if you have any of those, please ask. All right. Well, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Derek.
And we are hoping to help you put the pieces of your health together.
See you next time.